Hello and welcome to Conquering Chaos, a mom's guide to self-care and sanity. I'm your host, Sydney Crow, and today's guest is Katie Collicker. Welcome, Katie.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. I'm so excited that you're able to tune in from Salt Lake City today. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you have to share. You are a mom of 5 kids in 5 years, so that is a huge
Yep.
feat all in itself. Why don't you let the audience know a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, so like you said, I'm a mom of five and I'm a soccer coach. I'm a soccer mom, like typical soccer mom. I also coach. I have a part-time job, and then I also started my own youth soccer podcast. So that's kind of how we connected, is I have my own podcast as well. But I'm a very busy person, but I'm definitely a mom.
That's amazing. Well, how old are your kids?
So my kids are 13, 11, 10, and I have twins that are I just turned in a couple months ago.
That's amazing. So, 5 kids under 5. Why don't we take us back to the beginning? You were telling me that in the very beginning, it was fairly isolating and you had some struggles mentally. So, tell the audience about, what that was like for you and how you overcame that.
Yeah, so it was definitely a struggle. The twins were a surprise, like they were a surprise in themselves. And I had been told by my OB at my last pregnancy that my uterine lining had been thinning, and so I could maybe have one more pregnancy. And so he said, we can either tie your tubes because I had to have C-sections with all my kids. And he said, we can either tie your tubes now or you can hold off and then do it if you decide to have another baby. And I was like, no, we'll wait because we had just had 3 kids in about 3.5 years, I think. And so I was like, well, let's just wait. Maybe in a couple of years, we'll have another kid. And then my daughter was born in the spring of 2013, and then my twins were born in the summer of 2000. And so all of it was kind of a whirlwind because I knew that it was going to be my last pregnancy. I was having twins. It was a whole emotional roller coaster. I was basically a deer in headlights from the moment I found out I was pregnant. I found out I was twins, and all the way until they were about a year old. It was just such a fog, and it was a super big struggle. I had just started a new job that I quit because I was going to be having to take care of all these little kids. My son was going to be starting kindergarten, which I missed his first day of kindergarten because I was in the hospital with my twins. And it was all in all just very emotional and a lot of stuff to process because it all happened at once. It was a new beginning for my oldest, and it was kind of a closing door for me. I'm the type of person that I don't necessarily like to be pregnant, but I enjoyed pregnancy. So it's really weird to say that. I like being a mom, which is also really weird because I was the youngest and I was never around babies or kids. And so when I became a mom, and I was the only girl as well. So when I became a mom, it was really different for me than what I kind of was used to. It's really weird. Like I remember I was just thinking about the first time that I babysat, and I had never changed a diaper before, but I just kind of got volunteered to go babysit for somebody. And I'm like, I've never even been shown how to change a diaper. But then, after I started babysitting, I finally figured, finally got taught. I had to ask somebody. I think it was a neighbor in my neighborhood that I called over one day because while I was babysitting, I'm like, hey, I need help. And so she's the one that showed me, like, not even my own mom because she was working. But
Yeah.
anyway, so the whole emotional roller coaster of all the different emotions that I was experiencing was definitely a struggle and a trial. And I don't even think at the time I knew I was really processing it because it was so much so fast. When my twins came home from the hospital after 3 weeks, they were on oxygen. So we were having to do that. We really didn't go out a whole lot because they were just a struggle to take with us.
Yeah.
And so I had basically three kids in car seats and two kids in boosters at the time because I had a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, a 2-year-old, and then my twins. So it
Wow.
was a lot. I have pictures of us going places and we were like a circus. Like if you have multiple kids and you go out in public with them, you're a spectacle. So that was kind
Yeah.
of that was kind of how it was, just taking them anywhere, lugging them around. It was definitely a struggle, but we had a lot of help from family, and I'm really grateful for that. They were a huge support to us, some of our neighbors. I had a really good friend of mine, a best friend growing up since we were in diapers, basically. Her niece helped out a lot and babysat for us so
Wow.
we could have date nights and stuff. And so that was finally getting over them being babies and being able to go out and feel like we were human again was really nice because for about a year we were like in zombie mode. We weren't
Mm.
sleeping, and my husband travels a lot for work. He's a soccer coach, and so he travels a lot to different tournaments and things. And so that was also really difficult the times that he had to leave. My parents would help or his parents, and so it was a lot, especially with the kids starting to get into school and being in preschool and having to be different places. It's a lot to be a mom.
It is. I mean, we definitely wear a lot of hats, right? You talked about having to drive them around places. We're cooking, we're cleaning, we're organizing, we've got all of these hats that we have to wear just to kind of keep the ball rolling in our home and then when you compound that and you have, 7 lives that you're managing under one roof at a given time, that just creates that exponential weight load for you. And so
Yeah.
that's that first year of survival mode, the mental toll that took on you. Tell us a little bit more about that and what did you do to get out of that?
So it was honestly, I was in like a fog. It's a really weird state that I was in, and my husband can attest to it. Like I mean, and he kind of was as well, but in his own respects. But I was basically just surviving, like eating, sleeping, like just getting through the day. And once we felt that we were at a comfortable place that we could take them out in the world more or have people watch them and we felt comfortable leaving them, then I feel like we started our lives again. We kind of restarted in a
Yeah.
way. And like I said, my friend's niece, she was a person that we felt comfortable leaving our kids with to watch our kids so that we could like just go to a movie or go to dinner and have that time away. It's very important to have that time. Like we would try and do that, but it was really hard with how little they were and how much care they needed and how often they would eat and the schedule that they were on. With our other kids, they weren't ever really on a schedule because when my husband would travel, a lot of times I would go with him. But as they got older, and one of my kids was an extremely difficult traveler. Our oldest is like pro traveler. He's a little adult and he could travel all over the place. He's great at it. Our second son was awful. And then our daughter also was only 15 months behind him. So it got really difficult really fast. And so we kind of stopped traveling. But we also, like I said, we didn't put them on schedules really because if we ever traveled, we didn't want that to get disruptive. And I know there's a lot of people who love the schedule. And when we had our twins, we had to stick to that schedule. Otherwise, we would not have survived. And so it was a lot different for us sticking to that schedule, but it was also really good. It was kind of a lifeline for us because we were like, Kate, we have to do this and we have to do that. And like in the hospital, they would give us like a schedule of or times like when you fed and when you changed and all that stuff. And I stuck to that for months after we left the hospital just so that I could have a routine with them,
Yeah.
which was good. But then anyway, like I said, we started feeling comfortable going out and you know I felt like we were kind of getting back into it. And then I decided to get a gym membership that I felt comfortable with leaving the kids there while I went and exercised. And so that was also another thing that I started doing was taking the self-care part into,
Mhm.
because I started to not feel that great about myself. I had always been a dancer and athlete, and I was always in pretty good condition and physically. And after having all my kids so close together and kind of letting myself go, drinking a lot of caffeine to stay awake in that first year of my twins, I really wasn't taking care of myself physically.
Yeah.
And which started to take a toll on me mentally. And so I decided I needed to do something about it. And so, like I said, I got a gym membership that I felt comfortable with taking my kids there, that they would have a good experience. And so I started doing that a couple times a week, which was definitely a great help as well, was that exercise. I had tried to go, like, just my neighborhood is gorgeous and has walking paths everywhere. And so I tried to do that, but it got to be a little bit too difficult because, the kids want to run around and run away. And so I really needed to focus on myself and not necessarily be worrying about them. And so I did that, and that worked out really well for me, was finally getting back into that routine of taking care of myself as well.
And that's so important. Like so many moms, and it happens almost across the board, right? We bring this new baby home or babies home in your case. Maybe you've got a couple others at home. And then all of the sudden it's like somewhere along the line, it's like you've been in survival mode for so long that you almost forget what self-care looks like. You almost forget what your body needs or what your mind needs. And then it's this huge undertaking for many women to get back into that routine, right? But we were kind of chatting before the episode started, and it's so important to have that self-care piece so that your cup is like overflowing into those around
Mhm.
you, because you can't pour from an empty cup. And you're going to hear that cliche a lot on this podcast, because we talk a lot about moms and how depleted we become. But there's a reason why they say, put your oxygen mask on first when the plane is going down, because you really physically are unable to help anyone around you when you are unwell. So
Right.
kudos to you for figuring out what you needed and making that happen for you and your family. Are there any specific tips around self-care or motherhood that you would like to share with the audience?
Um, I would say biggest tip is don't judge yourself against other moms. That
Mm.
is the biggest, and I mean, it seems broad, but it's very good. So definitely take that to heart, because again, everybody's journey is different. Everybody's situation is different. Everybody's beliefs are different. And so you can't judge yourself against other people, and don't judge others as well. So in turn, kind of, you don't want to be judged against what somebody else is doing, and definitely don't judge others. Like, support them. Like, there was a mom. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna start crying. I took my kids to the grocery store one time, and I was so overwhelmed. Like I told you earlier, I was like basically a carnival walking around with all my kids, and they would get super overwhelmed. But there was a lady in the store who was just like, "You're doing a great job. Like, your kids are happy, and that's what matters." And it was kind of like, "Thank you for saying that. I don't know who you are, but that was awesome. So thank you." So make sure you do that to people. Like, tell them you're doing a great job. Like, um, because that was probably something I needed to hear. And it's definitely something that moms need to hear, is that they're doing a good job. But you don't hear it all the time. So anyway, sorry, I started to tear up.
No, that's
Why?
okay. I
But
mean,
it was definitely an emotional thing for her as a person to be able to say that, versus other people who would be like, "Oh my gosh, why did she bring all of her kids to the grocery store and da 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 da?" And it's like, well, because I had to,
yeah, we need
you
food to put
know?
on the table.
Yeah. And so it was like one of those things where I was like, "Are you gonna watch my kids so I can go grocery shopping? And are you gonna do it for free?" Like, it's one of those things where when you take your kids to a restaurant, and I know sometimes my kids don't behave 100%, but they're kids. And so it's like, this is kind of a treat for them. And I'm sorry that maybe I'm ruining your date night or something, but I didn't want to cook tonight or something. Like we're celebrating something. You don't know what's happening if, somebody's taking their family out. And so don't be rude.
Totally. I love that. And
Um,
it is a lot about building up this community. I mean, the female culture has been so competitive for so long. I mean, our
mhm,
generation definitely was raised to almost be pitted against each other, right? We had movies like Mean Girls and all of these things that just showed or exposed what culture was really like for women. And I think now that we're getting to a stage where we're adults and we have kids, we don't want our kids to be raised in that same type of culture about like
mhm,
this competitiveness. And so I think if you can be that lifeline for somebody at the grocery store or at a restaurant and just say like, hey, you're doing a great job, it goes so much deeper than that. Because I mean, obviously that was a really emotional time for you. And that probably just felt like a lifeline, like, holy crap, I'm doing a really good job here. And thank you for noticing the amount of effort that this is putting in and or that I'm putting into this. And I think I had a similar situation this summer where, my kids had a long day. We had been traveling. I thought we would stop at this market and my kids were just not having it. So we were walking back to the car and everybody was upset. And this lady pulled me aside and she was like, I just want you to know that you're doing a great job. And, it's okay if they're fighting today. They probably love each other a lot. And, it won't be like this every single day. And it just to have somebody, who I didn't know at all, who
mhm.
witnessed that, I was doing the best that I could with what I had that day. And it goes a long way for people. So kudos to you for saying that that's your piece of advice. I really appreciate that. And I think it's so important for us to just rally together and build those villages that, everybody talks about how it takes a village to raise a kid.
Yep.
Even if that's some stranger at the grocery store or walking down the street at a market. I mean, it really does go a long way to just get that pat on the back because we're always in our heads feeling like we're never doing enough. And motherhood can really be trying in that aspect because you think like, man, like I'm doing everything I can and it just never feels like enough. And so when you have
Mhm.
somebody, extend that lifeline or give you that pat on the back, it really does go far. And I think in today's society where, everything is on social media, but it's just a snippet, like we're just getting a window. So when you talk about comparing yourself to other moms, like what you're seeing is only what's getting put out there. You don't know what's happening behind closed doors. You don't know if maybe that happy Christmas photo that she posted in front of the tree was the 10 seconds she got of peace with her family that day. And then it was just pure chaos behind the scenes after that
Mhm.
picture or before that picture. So I wanted to throw that out there on top of that because it is so easy for us to feel down and out when we're using social media, as
Mhm.
a window into what we're thinking other people's lives are like. So
Yeah.
well, if there's nothing else, Katie, I just wanted to say thank you so much for being on the podcast. Thank you,
Yep.
everybody, for tuning in today to today's episodes where we help you conquer the chaos one day at a time. I'm Sydney Crow, and we'll see you on the next episode.